Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Riverman.
Dean, we're digging into more end-user data.
Yes.
From another one of our BlueStar Nation surveys.
Yes.
This time we spoke to 125 retail executives about their POS needs.
Did they want to talk to us?
I mean...
I think they did. Because we got good info.
Sure. I mean, yeah. We didn't go say like, hey, these guys on a TEConnect podcast want to talk about this, because they might have been like, whatever, you know.
Are you the ones doing the calls?
I am not.
You're not.
I am not.
So you're not the one picking up the phone and calling these people?
Nope.
You're just the benefactor of the information.
And more nope. And in fact, if you stay tuned for next week's episode, where we're talking about some more tech bites, you'll understand even more of why I'm nope on the idea.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A little teaser. Look at that.
A little teaser.
Laying a teaser for the next episode.
But today
we're talking about retail POS. So we got into, a discussion about, we asked folks about their POS selection process.
Okay.
Like how and why they select point of sale, what they're looking for, big features that they look for, how often they're updating their software and hardware, what kind of challenges they're encountering. That could be opportunities for you, obviously.
Gotcha.
Their needs, their wish list for point of sale. And again, some opportunities where you could potentially go out there and sell some new stuff and, help change the game a little bit.
See, I love this. I love this business intelligence. This is the kind of stuff,
man.
Right? Now our VARs can walk into the next retail establishment and they got numbers.
That's right.
They know what to expect.
That's right.
Yeah.
So stick around for all that, plus our usual value to the VAR. What's TEConnecting with us? It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, Dean, let's go digging into this. First of all, big thanks to ELO for sponsoring this survey. We appreciate them. And they actually, they gave us a little bit of direction on this one with some of the questions of some of the things they wanted to learn about and understand.
I like that, yeah.
And it very much fitting in line with, a lot of what they're trying to do in the POS space with all-in-ones and integrated payments and stuff. So, and to that end also, we recently, in fact, as of this release, yesterday, not yesterday, in a couple weeks, there'll be a ELO payments, integrated payments webinar. That we're coordinating with them. So
Very nice.
Look for a link in the show notes to register for that. And then if you're checking out this episode later on, once it's out, I'll put the link to the recording in there.
Yep.
But I think it'll be a nice tie into what we're talking about here as well.
Yeah, nice.
All right, let's start as always, a little bit of the methodology so you know who that we talked to. As I mentioned, it was 125 retail folks.
Yep.
Half of the folks we talked to were in IT. They identify their departments as IT. A third, 33%, said they were executives or owner level, and 17% at operations. Seniorities, where we had a pretty broad level of seniorities here. 30% were directors, 30% VP or head, 21% identified as senior managers, and 19% were C-suite or owner level.
Can I pause on just this one here real quick? Or no, keep going.
Yeah,
okay. No, I mean, that's a lot of senior people there.
It is.
We don't have any, chums on this.
That's the goal.
Survey.
No, it's not just some rando like working part-time in a...
It's not the fry. Well, this is retail, so it's not the associate out on the floor. Although we value their opinion.
Or it's definitely not a fry cook either, if that's what you were going to say.
Exactly. But I mean, this is like, I was impressed by the seniority that we have here.
Yes, that's the goal. We wanted to get people who actually are decision makers and people
this
that,
is like
are thinking about this
80% of these people are director or higher, and then the other 20% are senior managers. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we specifically wanted 100% of our respondents to be brick and mortar physical only stores. So that we
Nailed it.
A sense of what's going on actually in store here.
I was going to ask if that was like serendipitous or if that was actually something that we were going for.
That's something the company we work with to help us do these surveys. We can give them some parameters of like, hey, we only want... we only want these job levels. We only want these,
and they got to be brick and mortar.
Exactly. So they put it out to a bunch of folks, but if folks are answering the survey, if someone said like, no, we sell online too, then they got X'd out of the survey. Sorry about your luck, but we only wanted the brick and mortar folks.
Today we don't care what you have to
Yeah,
say.
exactly. So some other time we will care. I think other surveys we have, but this time we just wanted to know what folks are using as far as physical point of sale. Number of locations, 42% had 100 to 249 locations, and another 25% were 50 to 99. So, again, not looking at like, upper tier, we opened it up, there were still some folks from like, maybe some like tier 1 stores that had the opportunity to
Only
answer as
5%
well.
though.
Right. But mostly we were, the goal was, hey, we really wanted to get a lot of folks that were like in the mid to lower mid tiers.
Then they nailed it again. I mean, it's a really good sample here.
Exactly.
25% in that 50 to 100. Most of them in that 100 to 250 stores. To me, that's like SMB, right?
Exactly.
If you got 100 to 250 store, it's regional type of stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, the last thing we wanted to ensure was that anyone who responded that went through the whole survey was someone who was 100% involved in selecting or deploying point of sale systems. So we gave them options for other things they could potentially be involved in as well, but we specifically wanted folks who were basically the sole responsibility for, or at least a majority of the responsibility for selecting point of sale was part of their job description.
Interesting. Okay.
So that way, again,
I didn't know all these pre-qualifiers.
Skin in the game that we wanted here. We wanted folks that actually are
Can I make a comment?
involved in these decisions.
That's awesome. Can I make a comment on that last one?
Yeah.
Because you're right. So 100% of these people are involved in selecting and deploying point of sale systems. Right. Only 50% of them were involved in loyalty program software, which to me was a little bit of a head scratch. I mean, they
actually
do a good
50%
job.
said they were not involved.
I'm sorry, not involved.
Only
yes.
34% actually were.
Yes, 51% not involved. And that to me, that was a little bit of a head scratcher in the sense that I think that when I think POS and loyalty, it's like the two are hand in hand to a certain degree. I mean, in order to drive the royalty, you got to have it, or the loyalty, you got to have it involved in your point of sale system. So that was a little bit weird that they're not involved. But it also speaks to the fact that we talk about is that, I mean, it's like the challenger sale. You're going to have multiple people in this sale, even at these, we'll call SMB type of environments. There's more than just one. Even though all these people are involved, clearly there's more than just one.
I was glad we included the rest of that because, if you go, as always, there's a link in the show notes where you can follow along with the survey with us. If you check out the graphic there, we asked about, what's your involvement in other systems like CRM, ERP, supply chain management. And it is interesting to see, like, a lot of these folks, that were, again, the folks that definitely were involved in the POS had only tangential or minor connection with some of these other systems, which I think is interesting because, to your point, these things can be interconnected and should be interconnected probably in a lot of POS. And as you will find as we go through this survey, some of these things are things that people do want as part of their POS. And even though they're not necessarily involved in it, they think it should be part of what they're doing with their point of sale system.
I got you.
So,
yeah.
All right, well, let's get into some of the data here. And we're not going to do every single thing here, but I wanted to, to highlight some of the key points that we learned. So, first of all, I've got a selection of questions here that I feel are about point of sale selection. I'm going to kind of run through a few of these and then get your take on these.
Got it.
More than half of respondents said that this was at 54%, that when they were what their top consideration when selecting a point of sale solution was an all-in-one solution. So more than half said they wanted something that had everything all in one solution, not necessarily piecemeal. And more specifically, we were asking, hey, is your top consideration hardware, software, and all-in-one, or the payment processor? And overwhelmingly, half said an all-in-one. Only 21% said they were looking at the payment processor was their key consideration, and much smaller, 16 and 10% for hardware and software, respectively. When we asked about, do you prefer that all your POS hardware comes from a single manufacturer, 83% said yes. They prefer that everything was from a single manufacturer. Only 17% said no. We asked about the preferred operating system for POS deployments. This was one that was, I feel like, this kind of, we'll talk maybe more about this, definitely lends itself to consumer sentiment when it comes to, operating systems, because 36% said Windows, 23% Chrome OS, and 20% said iOS. Much smaller numbers, 13 and 8% said Android and Linux. And then, we also asked, like, hey, do you prefer that your point of sale be housed, the software at least, be housed on-prem, meaning, on-site, their own servers, they're hosting, doing their own internal updates and installations, or on cloud? which again, we all understand something that's internet connected is accessible from anywhere, but I'm giving you the context in which we asked this question and could have auto updating from the provider. This was a very, almost an even split here. 55% said they preferred on-prem, 45% on cloud. I'm going to stop there. What are your thoughts about this initial batch of, how they select and what they're looking for when they're selecting a point of sale?
Okay, let's rewind a little bit here.
All right.
83% want a single manufacturer. That jumped out at me. So again, the question
Do you think that's actually what happens, though?
No.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm really trying to get my head around this. So now I'm thinking to myself, well, it's like the old micros dealers or NCR or, who's answering that question? Then when I think SMB, it's like, oh, okay, well then this is clearly like the Toasts of the world or, coming in.
I thought too.
And it's like, they have these all-in-one used in a different context here, solutions. But it was really fascinating that 83% prefer that all POS hardware come from a single manufacturer, which, our world is not that.
Right.
It's more like our resellers are, they've got a Partner Tech all-in-one, they got a Star Micronics printer, they got a Zebra scanner. You've got multiple manufacturers coming up with the
it made me wonder, are we talking about maybe some white label stuff here where like potentially whoever they're working with is mixing and matching a bunch of stuff from a bunch of different hardware manufacturers, but white labeling it as if it's all part of their system potentially.
But then I tried to get in the logic of why would people say that? I guess, just the human nature. Oh, it all comes from one manufacturer. They feel good. Is that can I use that?
Maybe
it feels good that it's meaning in the sense that, it all came from HP. I'm not picking on HP or whatever. So, it's all their gear and
it should all
now
work together. It should all be compatible.
Right.
Which bears out in some of the data from later. We'll get into
Correct.
as well.
I guess that's where people are going
Maybe.
to, but and so that's really interesting. Now you put your VAR hat on. And I guess you need to realize that 83% of the people would prefer a holistic or single POS hardware or coming from one hardware manufacturer. That's really interesting.
I guess a point to...
But I would sell against that. But anyway,
yes,
go ahead.
I would say a point to clarify is that this is just a preference, not a this is how...
Yes.
Not a mandate and not
it is a preference.
This is how we are buying.
Yes.
And I think to your
really
point,
good
maybe there's a little bit of inherent bias built into that of like, well, if it's all from the same company, then it's all going to work together. I think of like, if you're an Apple person or you're an Android person, you most likely are doing everything within Apple's ecosphere or the Android ecosphere because it's all going to have better connectivity potentially because of that. So maybe that's where this kind of lends itself like, hey, I like the idea of all my stuff coming from the same manufacturer because I just assume that means that it's all going to work perfectly,
plug and play and work well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. As opposed to, if I could real quick, now that I know that and I'm a reseller that doesn't offer that, I'm going to sell into that in the sense that I would now be highlighting, well, okay, when you look at my total solution, we've got the best cash drawer in HPG. We've got the best blah, blah. We've got the best blah, blah. And call out why these different manufacturers exceed at those particular components and sell into it a little bit.
Yeah, because if you personally feel like, hey, I like what this particular manufacturer's cash drawer is, but I prefer this other manufacturer's monitors and and printers, then again, I think if you're positioning yourself as an advisor and as someone who understands these offerings and these solutions, hopefully that can kind of overcome that. But again, it maybe is just a point there to make sure that you're finding out if that is a preference and an interest, because that might help you combat some competition, especially maybe some of those online, hey, buy this all-in-one system and get this free or kind of thing or whatever that I know that a lot of POS providers have to combat against, where maybe that's part of it because there's a perception that, well, I'm buying everything from one place, so it's all stuff that works well together, even if it's not necessarily the best of each of the individual components.
Yep. So anyway, I found that really, really fascinating. Yep. Two more things. Windows still on top.
Yeah. I know.
Still 36%.
We've been saying the Windows is going to die for the last, I think, 10, 15 years.
It's like the old dog in the corner or something that's like that. Everybody, it's not, but Windows is still there, still 36%. And I was a little bit surprised on the split between on-prem and cloud. I don't know. I figured everything was in the cloud these days, or at least most of stuff was in the cloud. But for 55% to still be on-prem, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying one way or the other is bad or good. It's just you hear a lot about a cloud, and there was such a big, over the last decade, a big push to put everything in the cloud. Anyway,
and again, it's one of those things where, too, this is, again, a preference question. So I also wonder if this is another one where maybe there's some perception that on-prem is somehow better because you have more control, or you don't have to be as concerned
go
about,
down.
or maybe you're concerned about security or something. Yeah, exactly. Or things that might go down and you have no control over what's going on. So there could just be some, again, some bias that's maybe built into that.
Fair enough.
A couple more questions related to the selection process, payment processing. This was an interesting question that I think we decided to throw in there to kind of get a little better sense about payment processing. And basically, the question was, what best describes your attitude towards payment processing? The number one answer by far, at 66%, was I would prefer to have the option to choose from multiple payment processors over time, even if the payment processing isn't integrated into my POS. And then the next biggest was 25% who said they preferred an integrated processing into their POS, even if they have to pay slightly higher processing rates over time. So I thought that was interesting. And then we also asked a question, to wrap up this kind of segment about top features. We had one in here also about managing POS technology remotely. If you want to get into that one, we can. But I didn't feel like that one was quite as important as some top three. We basically asked, hey, what are your top three features that are the most important to you and your organization when you're choosing a POS? This is one that we had, quite a few answers that were within a margin of, like 20%, 10 to 20% of each other. But the top three, 44% said longevity of hardware and software before replacement. 38% said compatibility with other systems. 37% said service and support, and the next closest was quality and low failure rates at 31%.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts about that? That and the payment processing piece here?
Yeah, well, it makes sense, right? They want their gear to be rugged, not fail. Yep. They want it to be around for a while. And then when you look at how often they change out their gear, that pans, right? Most, I think, are we going to get to that one? I think we are, yes, in the next one. So, I mean, most folks are holding on to their gear, I would say, what's almost 70% in the 2 to 10 year range. Yep. So, they want to hold on to it for a little while. So that totally makes sense. Longevity makes sense. Compatibility makes sense. Service and support makes sense. Now, but the last one on here was aesthetics, look and feel. So when again, going back to the question you and I were just kind of talking about 83% preferring all the POS hardware to come from a single manufacturer, I was thinking to myself, well, maybe that has an aesthetic appeal. Like, right. It's got a clean, nice look. It's all from the one manufacturer. It's got this clean look. Honestly, but then this question, like, that's like the least priority is like what it actually looks like, what the aesthetics are. That's the least important feature in this particular roundup. So I don't know. I found that a little bit curious as well. Yeah,
I feel like a lot of these answers just kind of lend itself to the idea of like, look, I'm just looking for a hassle-free system. I want something that's going to work. I want it to work for a long time. I want it to be compatible with all the other stuff that I'm using, and I want good support for it. If you're covering those bases, I'm probably more invested and more interested than. I mean, granted, we weren't asking in this one a lot of like bells and whistle type questions, but I also feel like this kind of, again, goes back to the idea of like, sure, you might have all these cool little perks and interesting things about your system. And if you're spending a bunch of time talking about those and this person's really just wanting to know like, hey, but how long am I going to be able to use this before I have to replace it? How much are you going to support what I'm doing here? Is it going to work when I need it to work? If you're answering those questions, you're probably doing 90% of what these folks are actually concerned about and need to get out of this.
Now, going back to the payments, I did find it curious that 66% would prefer to have an option where they could utilize multiple payment processors. That's got me wondering. I don't know. This is something that I wish I knew the answer, but how often do these folks change payment processors? I wouldn't think that often, but they want the flexibility to do that.
Exactly.
Which I get. I mean, if the bank starts charging them another % or something like that, sure, they want the flexibility to be able to jump to a different payment processor. Right. Though they may not do it like ever, but they still want the option to do it, right? It's like, well, I don't know if I'll ever use this option, but I want it. Don't take that right away from me. So anyway, 66%. So that's important. That's a heavy indicator. If you're selling POS into retail, it'd be better to have multiple payment processor options as a part of your solution than not.
Yeah, definitely.
So I mean, that's a pretty heavy indicator right there.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so then we asked some questions, kind of getting into updates.
Right.
Questions about updating and questions about challenges. Let's start with the updates portion here. So we asked, hey, when was the last time that you updated your POS software and your POS hardware? The software side, 80% of folks had updated somewhere between 1 and 5 years ago, and which to me just says that software needs are constantly evolving. There's not going to be as much need for folks to. It just isn't going to make sense for someone to have a point of sale software for much longer than 5 years, I would think, at this point.
Good Lord. No, but look at that. 42% changed it between 12 and 24 months ago.
Yeah.
Bro,
that's
fairly
recent.
A lot of people.
Which for
Almost
something 50%. That we talk about as much as saying like, they're just stuck with something and they hold on to it for as long as possible.
I mean, the
hardware side, we're going to see that a little bit more, but on the software they're a little. That's a little dicey. There's a little bit of opportunity, I think.
Where's the loyalty? Now, I don't know if that was part of the follow up. Okay, did you completely change, or is it a new version? I don't.
True,
know.
That's a good point. That could one of those questions that if we thought about it ahead of time, maybe it might have been a better follow up. Yeah. And then on the hardware side, over half of them said that they had updated 2 to 5 years ago. So that was 53%, 20% again. There, even 20% I feel is kind of a high number. Said they had upgraded their hardware in the last 12 to 24 months. But overwhelmingly, at least half, it's been within 2 to 5 years, which still. Maybe not as old as some people might think. I think some folks, sometimes still think like, they're using POS that's like 10 years old sometimes. But, only 19% said that their POS had last been updated, their hardware had last been updated 5 to 10 years ago. So it's still fairly recent. There's still a little bit of recency bias going on here. But then I also look at this as like, hey, again, some opportunity here because there is still some legacy hardware that's sitting out there. Probably does need an upgrade. Is it matching up to that software, especially if they're making updates or switching software? Is it keeping up? Is the legacy hardware keeping up? Are they able to fully utilize that software with the hardware they have? Is there compatibility issues that are popping up? Are they finding increasing technical support needs that's holding them back or causing issues?
For sure. I was a little disappointed or depressed on the only 6% in the last 12 months. Because then I put my sales hat. I'm like, oh man, I have 125 people.
Right.
Or stores, prospects, only 6 of them are changing out. It's like, womp womp. Yeah. That's a pretty small universe. But, the 20 that did it in the last 20 and 24. So really, it's that 2 to 5 year. To me, if I'm walking in and I see gear that's 4, 5, 6 years old, that's a pretty good opportunity. Yep. And that's where I would focus in on rather than, which makes sense, right? Rather than somebody that just swapped it out or whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not like a phone. Like people aren't swapping this stuff out every 2 years, every 3 years.
It's not, which I think also kind of lends itself to the idea of like, look, this is not going to be, these aren't sales, unfortunately, you're going to win overnight. Unless you just happen to catch the right person at the right time.
Right.
It's a lot of it probably is going to be slow. It's going to be a lot of check-ins. It's going to be a lot of
relationship build.
Relationship building and keeping abreast of what's happening in the business and, keeping up to date with what challenges they're facing, which, speaking of which, our next question we got into, what are the top 3 challenges that you face with your current POS system? Number 1 was integration with other systems or software at 40%. 34% said speed and downtime. 31% said security, and 31% also said hardware compatibility. This all feels like it's blending together with this story we're telling here of like, hey, I want all my stuff to work together.
Yes.
Hey, I just mentioned earlier that older hardware may not be working with the newer software.
Yep.
The compatibility, which again, maybe that goes back to the idea of why they want to have supposedly one manufacturer.
Yep.
Because maybe they think that their hardware is not compatible because it's not from the same manufacturer.
Yep.
I did find security interesting up here because this is the only time I think that security really stood out in this survey. But I found it interesting that almost a third of maybe not a third, maybe more like a quarter of respondents said. I am concerned about, security, and that is a challenge that I think that I'm facing because I feel like security has become just one of those things that in our heavily connected world, that more and more businesses are starting to pay attention to and notice.
Yeah. So it made the top 3, but it was the lowest of the top 3, which maybe it should have been a little bit higher than that, for sure. I'm still surprised to see things like speed and downtime. Not that it's, I guess, here, but it's like, I feel like that's one of these things that we can address with new hardware.
Yep,
right?
yep.
None of these POS systems to me are that rigorous on the compute that it requires. That's just telling me there's some old gear out there.
Yeah.
And if that's your second biggest challenge is your speed and downtime, dude, new hardware.
I know. I feel like if you find someone that's their biggest complaint, that should be the person who's high on your list to try to get converted soon.
That's
because it's just a problem that you just shouldn't have. You're right.
Exactly.
It's 2024. You shouldn't have issues with that anymore. If the stuff you do on your phone or your laptop or whatever is your kid's tablet is moving faster than your point of sale system, that's a problem that can and should be addressed.
In fact, I was just in that environment where I was at a retail establishment. They were trying to use it, and then the cashier said, "This isn't working clearly. I'm just going to go to my phone. Here, give me your card."
Wow.
And did the process on the phone.
Wow.
So I was like, "Yeah,
that's not good.
That's not good."
Yeah. If
I were time for a new point of sale
a
system.
reseller and I was hanging out in there and I saw that happen, I would be cha-ching, oh man, we got to solve this problem. That should not be happening.
Right.
Relatedly, we did ask also a question about, basically a wish list, essentially, like what do you wish your current POS system had? And again, asked for them to select their top 3. And again, I feel like some of this kind of lends itself to what we've already heard, but there's some interesting answers here too. I think they're a little outside of what we've heard so far. Number 1, 25% said advanced reporting and analytics. 22% said integrated accessories. 21% said mobile payment options, and 20% said loyalty programs. What did you feel about this wish list? What did that tell you?
Well, number 1, ELO's going in the right direction, sponsor of this particular, because integrated accessories, we always talk about their modularity and how clearly why this survey kind of calls out, they like to, folks need to integrate different accessories. And the very last one, way down 19%, more connectivity. To me, that takes, different, you can spin it in different ways, but just modularity, flexibility around the hardware itself. So the first one, advanced reporting and analytics, dude, that to me that's AI. It's like there's AI solutions out there. If you're not a reseller that's in tune with some of these, in not reselling a point of sale software that has this type of stuff, or at least it's on the roadmap, be aware, because I get it. If I was a retail owner, I mean, analytics and reporting, that's where it's at. You're finding everything out about your customers. You need that business intelligence. You need to be able to glean from it now, not days from now, or not never. Like, my system doesn't even do analytics.
Right.
What?
Exactly. To me, this was a big red flashing light here of being able to go out and sell modern edge tech solutions, finding software partners that will help you accommodate some of these needs. Because it's probably not, some of this stuff isn't stuff that hardware can necessarily solve. Having the best printer out there is great, but it's not going to probably solve your data analytics, concerns
not at all.
Or address that. That's where the software portion is going to come in, and that's where strong partnerships that are focused on that kind of stuff. The data analytics thing too, I feel like every time we've done one of these surveys, in almost any industry, we're almost always asking questions about this, and overwhelmingly, people are saying like, "Yes, I want more data," and or I want more out of that data that I'm getting. I want to understand more of the data that I have or that I'm collecting and do more with it.
Yeah.
And I think that just can open up a great question about like, hey, I'll help you figure out what we can do on the POS side with data and analytics, but where else in your business are you looking for better data and analytics? Because that could maybe be some solutions that take advantage of security cameras, for instance, or use some untapped compute power to crunch some more data that you're collecting elsewhere. Maybe you've got some kind of an online aspect to your business and you're wanting to marry up data there to inform what you do in store and online.
Brilliant.
A great place to ask an additional question like, all right, well, if you're concerned about getting better data and analytics from your point of sale, you probably are concerned about that in other places in your business.
Clearly.
Let's talk about that. Let's figure out how we can, overall and more holistically, figure out how we can do more with the data that you can tap into in your business.
Agreed wholeheartedly. That's why this business intelligence is great. knowing that
Exactly.
walking in the door, you can have those conversations. Good stuff.
And then finally, we asked some questions that I feel like kind of, lends itself to the idea of some opportunities potential, for you to, if you haven't found enough reason to go out and start talking to your retail customers and figure out how you can help them with their POS. We asked a lot of questions around, the decision to switch point of sale, and preferences when it comes to buying point of sale. So this is another top 3 question. Top 3 factors that influence your decision to switch POS providers. This is hardware or software side. I found number 1 fascinating. 34% said direction from the corporate office. Like, all right, which tells me like, hey, maybe you need to make sure that you're starting,
Yes,
or
absolutely.
or again, using that challenger model or consultative sales in some way to get yourself up that ladder to get to that decision maker. Because again, I mean, that's the thing also, a lot of the folks answering this survey are probably folks that are working in that, potentially in that corporate office or are at that level. So maybe they're suggesting like, hey, we're going to do it because we make a collective decision or because a decision is made to make that change. But closer right after, 33% said compatibility with existing systems would influence their decision to switch. 28% said options for mobile, self-service, and online point of sale. 27% the competition, and then 26% said customer complaints. And then the last question before we maybe follow up on these two here. The last question we asked is, what's your preference for buying POS hardware, software, and services for your business? In other words, where do you want to get it from? Are you just going to go chase down whoever has got the best price? Do you prefer a single source, or are you selective? 68% said that they were selective. They said, I will pick and choose from various sources that offer what I need. Only 23% said whoever has the best price. And only 9% said they were looking at a single source for all their needs, which again, to me, is one of those preference things. Doesn't mean you can't be a single source.
No.
But it also means that, it means that they are very discriminating and particular, and they want the best stuff to get them what they need and accomplish what they're looking for in their business. And maybe you can provide that if you are also tapped into a broader solution ecosphere. And you have a bunch of partners that can help you, put together a great solution to give them all that they need. And you can be that single source at the end. So what were your thoughts about that and the desire to switch?
So, kind of going to the last one, 23%. Claim that price is the best, or that's the biggest preference is buying. So there you go. There's your number. 23% of your customers are buying on price. So good, bad, or indifferent, a quarter of the folks are just going to be buying on price. So
but
no matter how
I bet
good
that
you are,
number is probably lower than a lot of people would think.
Yes.
I bet you if you're a jaded reseller and you've been doing this for a while, you're probably like, they're all just buying whatever's the cheapest out there.
Or you hear your
probably
sales
think
reps
like
coming
half
back.
of them are saying that. No, it's not. It's not even quite a quarter of folks that are actually saying that.
So that
still
means
a significant number, but not an insurmountable one.
No, 75% see value. And it's not just about price. So the 68% that are choosing from various sources and really like the flexibility of being able to piece together a solution that's right for them is great, is good. It's still perplexing on the question earlier then about the all one kind of a thing.
I do agree on that, yeah. And I don't know, maybe if they were looking at this from the point of view of like, well, I'm not concerned about the price necessarily, so I want to be able to look around and shop around, and I might maybe I buy that all in one, but I buy it even if it's not the cheapest option that's out there because it's the best, what I consider as the best option. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, it does seem to conflict a little bit.
Absolutely. And then we go back to the other question about what factors influence your decision to switch point of sale providers. Compatibility with existing system. I mean, to me, it's the number 2 thing on the list. But again, that just highlights the fact that if you are getting into a new prospect, a new situation, you have to understand what do they have existing and how is your system going to be compatible or not compatible with that. And you better address that immediately in the sales cycle because that's a pretty big factor. You know what I mean?
I completely agree. I mean, it goes right back to, the challenge question earlier. What are your biggest challenges? Number 1 was integration with other systems, and tied for third was hardware compatibility. And there's other places where people mention compatibility, and they mention, connectivity, and clearly that is top of mind. And if you're able to go out there and find solutions that are compatible with what they're using, and again, everyone kept saying also like, hey, I'd love to have a system that gives me more flexibility with inventory management. I'd love to have a system that has loyalty programs. All these things I'd like to have. They're just not getting necessarily the system they currently have, and the compatibility is also part of that. So imagine if you can deliver something that works with across everything that's going on in their business, gives them that insight into data and analytics, gives them that connectivity that they're looking for, that compatibility they're looking for. Man,
you're going to be in a good spot.
You should be. Yeah, I would think so.
And if you can paint the picture of how you're going to get there, like, hey, by the way, you have existing system X. We're going to be implementing Y, so it's different, but this is how it's compatible. This is the timeline to make that happen. You got to address it so that the fear of switching goes away, because you got to assume you're competing against manufacturer X, right? Just the newer version of them. So just know that that's there. And so to me, that was like a glean. And to your point, we've combed it out a couple times here. This compatibility issue is key for a lot of folks.
Definitely. All right. Well, that wraps up the survey. It's like, this is one we didn't have, a ridiculous amount of questions, but I feel like it was some
good stuff,
a very thorough overview. Again, check out the show notes to find out, to read into a little deeper yourself. There's a couple of questions we didn't cover there. There's good stuff in this survey. And hey, check out BlueStar Nation in general, because that is a great place to find more surveys like this. This is actually, I think, the second time we'd done a retail POS survey. Our first one was 2 or 3 years ago. And it was interesting to kind of, see some differences between them, how things have and haven't changed. But we're always doing more of this stuff. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got survey ideas, send those into us. I mean, seriously, if you're thinking, hey, I want to know what's happening with a certain, segment of end users that I just don't have enough data or information on, I want to understand what's happening in their business, send that stuff to us. Tell us what you're looking to hear about. Give us some ideas for questions. We'd be happy to go out and put together a survey and try to gather that information for you, because this content's only good if you're finding value and use in it. So please, get that stuff over to us. Of course, as always, on the podcast itself too, if there's stuff that you want to hear more about here, let us know. Drop a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us a rating and review on your podcaster of choice. Send us a message. We'll be happy to listen to your ideas and topics you want about on the show. As always, you can find us on BlueStar's LinkedIn page. There's recaps of every episode every week there. Leave us messages there if you like. Make sure you're subscribed and follow our LinkedIn page. Follow our YouTube. And hey, as always, if you want to reach out to us directly, you can find us TEConnect at BlueStarInc.com. All right, Dean, let's wrap up. Let's do a little value to the VAR here. And, I think we've kind of covered a lot of this, but let's make it a little more succinct about what do you think that a retail VAR should be doing with the info that we've covered today? Again, I mean, just having the business intelligence to walk in and know what some of those pain points are going to be up front. So the compatibility is going to be an issue, right? So address it early on in the stages, and so that you can navigate that and you can position yourselves as being complementary and or an easy integration into your system, especially if you're overtaking some other manufacturer or things of that nature. Have some flexibility in payments. I never would have guessed that, but that's something to kind of key in on as it relates to that. That's really kind of interesting. And forget about the 83% that prefer one POS system. That's not such a big deal. I feel like that might be a little bit misleading. There might be more, or if you counter somebody that says that, ask them what they really mean by that. What are they actually saying with that? Because it might not be what you think. And then the last two things. Well, loyalty programs. I mean, I'm glad that we ask about that, because this rings through every single time. Loyalty programs and integration of loyalty programs. So now that. Number one, the decision maker on the point of sale system is not just often not involved in the loyalty program decision. So make sure you know who in the group are making those decisions, so that you can kind of tie in not just loyalty programs, but as we all know, there's a breadth of other types of applications and widgets and stuff like that when you get into online and overall kind of omni-channel type of experiences. Right? You need to know the basket of that walking in the gate too. And then mobile payments. Mobile payments continues to be something where people like to be able to get outside of the cash wrap and take mobile
mobile payments to facilitate, easier, frictionless transactions and stuff like that.
Yep.
Still ringing through in this particular article or survey.
Yeah, I agree. My thoughts on this are like, there was actually I was just having a conversation with some of the folks over at ELO about this upcoming webinar they're doing about the integrated payments.
Yeah.
And we were talking about like, hey, I was asking for a little detail, on what the webinar was going to be about, to put everything together. And, the point that it was Charles Dickinson that said this to me. He says, my thing is, I think it's time for us to start leveling up POS. And going out and just trying to sell components is not really getting you anywhere. You just find yourself swapping stuff out every couple of years or so, and it's not really getting you where you need to get as a VAR, and it's probably not getting them where they need to get as a retailer with their system either.
Yeah.
So I look at that. Everything we've learned in this survey feels like it feeds right into that. They're looking for more integration. They're looking for more actionable intelligence. They're looking for strong support, potentially all-in-one solutions. That integrated payments might be an aspect of that can help them get there too. So
compute that's fast enough to do the POS and advanced reporting and analytics.
Exactly. So go talk to your customers.
I like it.
Talk to them about these findings. Be consultative with them. Maybe this is one of those things where you go spend some time in the store and find out what they're dealing with and their pain points, and use that to kind of roll up a better message to the corporate folks when you go spend time with them. Like, hey, you know what? I spent some time in your stores. Here's the stuff where I was seeing where clearly, the day-to-day workers were frustrated with the point of sale. Here's the things I think we could be doing better. Yep. And then also just talk to them about this survey maybe and say, hey, what? I read this survey. It says that X% want this and X% want that. Do you agree with that? Are you on board with that? Okay, well, how can I help? How can I help you get where you need to be? If you're agreeing with this stuff, that's something I need to be helping you with. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes that can help you open the door a little bit.
No doubt about it.
When they've heard that their peers are saying something similar, and they go, "All right, yeah, you're right. I agree. This I do hate this about my current POS. Let's talk about it." So
yeah, right, exactly.
All right, Dean, let's wrap up as always with What's Tech Connecting with You. This is our fun segment where we talk about something in the world of science, business, tech, innovation, just something random we feel like chatting about today. So let's kick it off here. What's going on with you?
Well, I got a follow-up to a Tech Connecting with Me a little while ago about these.
All right. Is it about batteries again?
No, but it's about nuclear power plants.
Okay, all right. That's connected, yeah.
Empowering AI. So here's your headline. Meta's plan to build a nuclear power plant to power AI blocked by discovery of rare bee species. There it is. So we've handcuffed ourselves once again. We cannot. So Meta has scuppered is the word that
scuppered.
Yes. Have you ever heard of that word?
Silicon Valley term?
Well, no. I'm asking you the word.
I have not. No.
Okay. SCUPPERED.
Scuppered. Okay.
Has been scuppered by the discovery of rare bee species. So yeah. So and that's they were going to move forward. They wanted to move forward.
Right.
They got to power these AI data centers somehow. So I was all geeked about. Well, yeah, they're just going to do one of these little nuclear things.
Yeah.
No,
not so much.
Rare bee species.
They have to find another location potentially. Yeah,
they need to find another location, or they need to do like their rival did over at Amazon and just buy
out an existing
the 3 Mile Island.
Coming to an ex-nuclear power plant near you. Hey, Meta, again, Chernobyl's probably still available. I don't know.
There you go. If you could just transmit that power all the way across.
That's a good point. Yeah, you might have a lot of red tape to deal with over there.
Oh, man. See, we get in our own way sometimes. Yeah, it's just like,
though, we got to preserve those bees. I
love me some bees.
They are an extremely important part of the natural order of things.
Critical, yes.
If you've ever seen the Jerry Seinfeld starring bee movie, animated bee movie, they make a very poignant point about how the lack of bees can be very damaging for our world.
Oh, yes. Like no food.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of important. I guess I'll give you this one.
Yeah, right. So what's Tech Connecting with you?
All right. Well, hey, we've just been talking about retail, and the holiday season is right around the corner. And if you're strapped and you can't figure
going
out
holiday season already.
I don't like to talk about it this soon.
Go ahead.
If you're thinking about the holidays, and you're like, all right. I mean, I've already started my Christmas shopping, and you're like, all right, I'm trying to figure out what I want to get for somebody. I don't know much about them. I don't know what they like. They've got everything. What are you likely to get for them?
A gift certificate,
exactly.
A
gift card. Well, I think we all kind of knew that like gift cards are not, I'm not going to call it a scam, but like a little bit of a,
Oh yeah, it is.
are they,
Not a scam. Yeah,
a
that's
little
not
bit
the
of
right word.
companies are making a lot more money
Oh,
off of gift
yes.
cards than is being reused.
Oh yes.
Here are some of the alarming stats around
Oh,
it.
I can't wait to
So
hear
this is an article from Quartz. It says Americans have billions in unused gift cards. At least 2 in 5 Americans have unused gift cards lying around. Let's talk about some actual statistics here, though, because this is going to blow your mind. The total amount of unused gift cards is estimated to be around $27 billion. And I'm pretty sure this is U.S. only. This isn't America only.
Man,
$27 billion.
that's just free money right to those entities.
Right. The average person is holding on to $244 worth
Get out of town.
unused gift
Seriously?
cards. I mean, I know.
I don't have a single one on me.
I was just looking at home the other day. I
just
saw a couple
lied.
that we have. We had like a Target one laying around.
Okay.
And I saw like someone for like some random restaurants in Covington. My wife and I don't go down to Covington often.
Yeah.
So I've got that.
Yeah.
I've probably got one in my wallet or something. I don't know. So there's a few of those out there. I found this interesting. Millennials have the highest rate of unused gift cards at $322 a piece. Does that just mean it's just like millennial parents are just less capable of, or friends are just less capable of buying good gifts than any other generation?
Yeah,
for some
I think
reason?
so. I think so. Yeah.
And I'm going to let you guess. What do you think are the top 2 retailers with the most outstanding gift card balance out there?
So
$1 billion each.
Target?
Not Target. That's a
Walmart?
good guess. Walmart's one of them.
Okay.
The other one, think more on the restaurant side
Yeah.
or beverage side.
I don't know who. Starbucks. Yes. Really.
Which I get that one because I feel like Starbucks is like the corporate go-to giveaway.
Exactly. Yeah. Here, have a coffee.
Because I get them all the time, and I don't drink coffee, so I'm always like handing them to my wife, and then she'll lose them or she'll gather them together and eventually go out and get them because she's not going to Starbucks on any kind of regular basis or whatever. But I feel like that's one of those. Well, I got a bunch of people I got to give some gift cards to, and Starbucks, right? Everybody likes coffee, right?
Yeah.
So I can see that one, and then Walmart is just kind of like it's like the general retail type thing. So
You know who does
that makes sense.
amazingly, now that I think about it, who does a poor job of that is Amazon. Because once you put in your Amazon gift card and then you like buy stuff, it always defaults to using that gift card.
Yes.
So Amazon needs to rethink their model a little bit. Like bury that stuff.
Maybe it's not something they're building into their business model. Like, hey, we're gonna sell billions of dollars of these, and people aren't going to use millions of dollars of it.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe they've decided they aren't going to do that. And
do you have any more stats? Because the other one I'd like to hear is because I think another reason why retailers and whatnot love gift cards is because of the additional spend. You walk in with a $20 gift card, but you're walking out with $40 worth of
exactly.
product.
You're not just buying that amount.
My daughter just did that with a Lululemon gift card that she got for her birthday.
No one wants to go and use a gift card, like a $20 gift card, buy something for $19, and then get a gift card back that has like 70 cents on it. Everyone hates that.
You're using it all,
right? Because that's going to either get just thrown in the trash or whatever. 100%. So you're always looking to use more and therefore have some.
Have you had that embarrassing moment where you forget what's on a gift card?
Oh,
so you take it up to can you tell me how much is still on here? It's $1.33, sir.
Like, I'm using it. Yeah. So this article does point out that there are options for you if you don't want to use gift cards. You got something you don't like. There are actually websites and platforms now where you can trade in. One's called Card Cash and another one Raise.
What?
Or they will give you at least 70 or 80% of the value of the gift card back to you in cash.
Get out of town.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. So,
what do they do with the full amount? Do they go out and buy stuff?
Probably, yeah. They're probably using it in some way. I don't know.
Okay,
I'm sure they're getting something out of it. So,
yeah, I got
or maybe donating it in some way.
You
I don't know.
Raise was one of them. What's the other one?
One called Raise, and the other one's called Card Cash.
Card Cash. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah.
So there you go. You got some options out there if you need them. I try not to buy a lot of gift cards for folks. Or if I do, I try to make a point of this is something I know you will like and actually use. But yeah, I get it. So, all right, that's what's TEConnecting with us this week.
Yep.
So, hey, until next time, we got to unplug. Go out there, make a plan for your retailers. Go out for the new year, use some of this data and figure out how you can win some business.
Absolutely.
Go spend some of those gift cards, for God's sakes. You're about to get a bunch of them. You might as well spend them. Get them out there. And, can you imagine if we all at once went out and started spending
cashed
those
them all
gift cards?
in?
The economy would probably crash. We'd probably spend all like the top tier stores into like a tailspin. I mean, think about that. If there's $1 billion.
No, $27 billion.
Walmart
alone
has $1 billion, at least $1 billion. Starbucks has $1 billion. Imagine if only half of the people that had that, all in like one holiday season, went in and cashed that in.
Yeah. They're not counting on that.
That could cripple those companies.
They could.
They're not. They're counting on you losing those things and never using them again. So
it's in the couch cushions.
Defy the corporate gods and go spend some gift cards. And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect podcast is brought to you by ELO. Discover the seamless transactions with the ELO Pay 22-inch integrated payment solution based on the iSeries 4. This is a versatile and user-friendly self-service platform that ensures effortless interaction, transforming every transaction into a smooth and engaging experience. I think that fits right in with everything we just talked about in this survey.
Smooth and engaging.
Smooth and engaging. That's what these folks want. The new model of the ELO Pay features a 22-inch FHD 10-touch display, integrated NFC, Android 12 with GMS, a Qualcomm SD660 processor, 8-megapixel autofocus camera, and scratch-resistant glass. Of course, ELO is well known for their modularity, as we talked about in this episode. That allows you to mount, configure, and customize the ELO Pay 22-inch to fit any application with a universal Visa mount and Edge Connect attachments for up to 3 peripherals.
Well, there you go.
You're solving it all in one here. You're giving all this integrated stuff. You're giving all these bells and whistles that you want to be able to attach. A lot of flexibility there. This could be what goes out and wins you that new business.
There you go.
To learn more and see additional specs, check out the link in the show notes or contact the BlueStar ELO team.